Hey guys and gals, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Comics and Sweet Tea. Got an awesome guest tonight. Can't wait to bring him on, but a few things first. The channel is growing. That's because of all you awesome individuals. Hey, if you're new to the channel, subscribe, join the conversation, let your voice be heard, jump out and chat. Uh, Tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us what we're doing right. Hey, and that nasty algorithm. Let's beat that. So leave one of these and drop a comment. Let us know what you think. If you hate it, say fine. I hate it, but at least I know you're watching. You know. But anyway, I ran up one more thing. That little bell. Hey, you might not know when a show's airing, so ring that bell like you're standing in a tower with no fucking pants on. And you know what I'm talking about. You've done it. And if you hadn't, fucking fake it. And just go with it. Hit that little bell so you'll know when the show's going to be on. You'll get the notifications and you can jump on and like I said earlier, join the conversation. Well, anyway, I'm me, you're you, but we've got an awesome guest coming back to talk about his next project. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring the incredible Jade Lowder in. Jade, awesome to have you back, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for letting me come on. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, dude. It's like I've told you a few times now. You might get tired of hearing it. You're always welcome, dude.
Well, thanks, dude. Yeah, that means a lot.
So, like we were talking backstage, you've been busy. You have been
Oh yeah.
extremely busy. Just it's nice to be in demand, like you said earlier. You know, and, but tell us. We'll jump into your next project right now. Uh, Give us the lowdown, man. What you got coming down the pike?
Yeah, sure. So April 16th, coming to Kickstarter, is my next installment of It's a Horror Show. It's a Horror Show is my creator-owned series. The first one I've got. I was trying to find the book. I don't know where the book is right now. But I've got the postcard, so that's the cover. So It's a
Awesome.
Horror Show is my series. Every issue is a standalone story, so they're all different and whatnot. So the basic kind of idea of it is campy, cheesy horror. It's definitely not meant to be like taken seriously. It's very tongue in cheek and kind of just playing with the tropes of horror that I'm really into and I think are really fun. So the one coming out on April 16th is It's a Horror Show: The Breakup, which is again, like I said, standalone story. It's about a woman who enters a relationship with this guy, seemingly like really great, and they move in together, and then she starts finding out that it's maybe not all that it's cracked up to be, and he's actually a cult leader,
Oh wow.
and he buries her alive. She escapes and goes on bloody fucking revenge, man.
It
And that's
doesn't
the
get
that's the
better than a
lowdown.
revenge story, man. I
Yeah,
mean, the sky's the limit. You can. I remember that movie. I spit on your grave. You remember
yeah,
that one? That was fucking
totally.
crazy, dude.
Yeah, I think that like that's one of the things I really wanted to do in horror was like play with a revenge story, because I think there's so many like good movies that do like just fantastic jobs of
Oh
telling
God.
that kind of a story in horror. And I think it's like horror is like the perfect genre to do like a revenge story, because you can just make it as like gritty as you want, and then in there you can just have so much fun with it. And so yeah, I came up with this idea about like a year ago, and I just sat on it. I wrote it all out as a script. Like the script was done in like a day, because the
Oh wow.
idea was just fully
Yeah.
fleshed. I was like, there it is, and I wrote it all out, and then I just kind of sat on it because there were other projects, and you know how it goes.
Oh yeah.
And and then when I finally had like a little bit of time where I was in between projects, it was time to make this one happen. and I didn't know if it was going to be the next installment of It's a Horror Show, if it was going to be something totally different, or if it would even be something I'd actually want to publish until I got going with it. And as
Right.
I started drawing it and seeing it, kind of come to life, I was like, okay, yeah, this is the next It's a Horror Show for sure. And then, ideas started spurring on when I started making it. Like, Jerry, you're in the book.
I think that, yeah,
um,
man, I wanted to tell you, I absolutely loved that. I mean, I told you, I had forgotten. You hit me up a while back about killing me off in one of your books. And I was like, fuck yeah, dude. Just make it super gruesome. And boy, you did not disappoint.
Good, man. I'm glad. Yeah. So I came up with the idea of it'd be really fun. I had to make all these cult members that she, exacts her revenge on. And
Right.
instead of just making up some characters or whatnot, I thought, it'd be really fun if I got some of the other guys from LKC in on this, and I took their likenesses and some other guys just in the comics community that I'm a part of to make them the characters instead. And I was just like, man, I don't know if they're gonna go for it of me just like brutally killing it every single time. Like I messaged anybody, they're like, yeah, just make it really gory. And I'm
Yeah.
all right, man, you got it.
Yeah, man. Dude, I seen that and that just made my whole day. I'm like, hell yeah, man. I love it. Love it.
Thanks, dude. Well, yeah, that was, again, that was just kind of the process of like drawing it. It wasn't even an idea I had until I was like just physically doing the thing.
Right.
And then it just kind of seemed like, oh, this would be really fun, like little cameos kind of a thing. And yeah, I mean, Mark, the head of Lesser Known Comics, he's in there. He gets it pretty good. And he's wearing his trademark flip flops. If you ever meet Mark,
Yeah.
the dude is just always wearing flip flops, and that plays into it a little bit. And Dan Price, Jevin Loop, Doug Knight, Jay Red, tons of really awesome creators, and they're all lent their likenesses to me.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a ton of fun to murder my friends.
Yeah.
Yes,
I mean, sure.
Yeah.
I tell you, man, that's one of the cool things about, not just being a part of LKC, but having that community, that support. You can reach out, and we do all the time to each other. We'll bounce ideas off each other. We'll send people our art, and hey, man, I think I need to do this, but what do you think? I mean, I do it all the time, constantly, because I question myself. I mean, we're our own worst critic,
Oh, for sure.
but not only you get those cool little Easter eggs, it's like that little thing that was trending here recently. If you know, the guys. It's like all our own little inside joke. All the creators in our community, they see that and they're like, "Holy shit, man, that's me! Jade fucking killed me, dude." Yeah.
Yeah.
But I said that to say this also, community, and I hate to I'm not even going to touch on that. We know what happened here recently within the comic book community, but, you need that support,
Yeah.
you really do, because as an artist and as a creator, a lot of times we live in our own head, and sometimes that can be a very dark place. And it's nice to have that stability of that community, that support system, if you want to go that far, because it really is. I mean, sometimes I know I do. I feel like I'm on an island, and it's nice. I can pick up the phone and in 3 seconds and chat out to one of you guys. Hey, what's going on, and just kind of come up for air for a little bit and get out of my own head.
Yeah, man. I totally feel that. I know that like before I kind of started reaching out and kind of building the community, and that feels like almost like a bad way to kind of like say how it kind of evolves. Like you're not really you're not actively building it. It just kind of
Right.
happens.
Yeah.
It's just about you contributing, and then that is the thing that actually builds it. But before I kind of was doing that stuff with comics and whatnot, it was definitely very isolating and felt very much like, man, is this worth it? What's
Yeah.
the point and all that stuff with making this kind of stuff. And then, that's what's been, so amazing about LKC. And I've said this before, I think maybe even on your show, but just like the community of LKC is probably, in my mind, one of the best parts of being involved with it.
Oh, definitely.
Is
Definitely.
Yeah, and being able to get that feedback, or just even if you're not necessarily just wanting to bounce ideas off of anybody, but just like it's nice to see other people sharing their work too.
Right.
Even if you don't have anything to share at that moment, but you can jump on we have like a group chat and stuff like that, and Discord servers and stuff, and you can just jump on and see what everybody's making, and you're like, oh, people are still making stuff, and that spurs you on to then go ahead and make stuff. And it's nice just to be a part of it, even if when you're taking more of a backseat. I think that's it's all really beneficial, to just hear and take in. And then when you do contribute, it's great because everybody is really supportive. And even if there is like a problem or something like that in your page, and it's not like people are just like, oh man, this sucks. They're just like,
Yeah.
hey, I noticed this, like you might want to like fix that or change this around a little bit. And it's all really, really constructive and helpful. And that community it really is the difference between you kind of just shouting into the void and you
Right.
actually being able to have a conversation, which I think just being able to have a back and forth is so much more meaningful than just like getting on social media and just blasting out, here's this next thing. And
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah, but I like to direct it to folks, and I think that ends up making it feel better for me, and I think more genuine when you are contributing like via social media and stuff.
Exactly. I've tried other social platforms, and I always, I come back to Instagram and I wind up deleting all those other, because that's where my family's at. I
Yeah.
mean, all you guys are like my second family. And it's nice to have that.
Yeah.
I mean, dysfunctional it may be at times, it's still a family. We still care about each other. We still inspire each other, and we still pick each other up when we're down. And just
Yeah.
like you said, you're not just shouting into the void and nothing's coming back. You got, well, hey man, and like you
Mhm.
said, they don't. Oh, that fucking sucks. What are you doing?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, what the fuck are you doing? No, they don't do that. They're like, hey, what if you try this? Or what if you
Mhm.
try that? Or it's incredible. It really
Totally.
is.
Totally. Yeah. I think that like it's not just having people, it's sometimes it's having like you find your people, I guess, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
And I think that Lesser Known Comics and that community that has been built is just like a perfect example of like our people finding each other. I don't know
Right.
if that makes sense, but
Perfect sense.
like
Perfect sense.
minds and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, not only that, you see, I mean, yeah, we all have our own friends at home and this, that, and the other, but they don't know, they're not having the same struggles, if you want to call
Oh,
it
for
that,
sure.
that we
Yeah.
do. I don't have a lot of artist friends outside of my my artist, my creator community. So they don't have a. When I say, man, I'm having a bad art day or this, that, and the other, because it will put you in a serious funk if you
Hmm.
let it. If you go down that rabbit hole and just stick your head in the sand, I mean, it can almost turn into depression. I mean, literally, I
Totally.
think it could if you really let it get you down.
Hmm.
Like, and it's nice to be able to reach out to people that are going through the same exact things and have been down that road and know how to navigate it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I think that that you have your friends and your family and stuff like that, and my position, I'm a professor at a college, and so I have like all my colleagues are artists, right?
Right.
um but that being said, like I teach in a school that's kind of like fine art, so that's like their end goal is like putting their work in a gallery, and my
Gotcha.
end goal is putting my work in a book. And so
Right.
it's kind of different just in terms of how we talk about making and all that kind of stuff. So even though that, like, I have artists around me and stuff like that can understand a good amount of that stuff, but when I start talking about like I don't know, page counts or transitions or turns or anything like that, or just
Right.
from one panel to the next, or just sequential design, they're just like, nope,
Exactly.
they're done or
Totally
whatever. And I'm like,
different world.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm writing dialogue, and they're like, well, I don't care.
Yeah.
And that's like, uh, uh, so I have kind of a community, but like it's the comic community specifically is just totally different.
Yeah. Definitely. 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 So while we were backstage, you were talking about all the work that you have coming up. So
Oh my
kind of tell everybody. I hate to put you through that again, but
no,
hey,
let's do it.
you need to get it out there, man. Let folks know how busy you are and what all you got
Yeah,
coming, man. I mean, it's a lot, guys. So strap in and listen.
yeah. Here we go. So 2024 is like in my mind the year of It's a Horror Show, where the the first one that we did came out back in 2022, and we released It's a Horror Show #1, which is called The Critique, and It's a Horror Show 2, which was called The Date. And we released those two way back in 2022, and then we haven't been silent, just working on things behind the scenes. And now all of it's coming to fruition, and 2024 is just It's a Horror Show the year, right? And so so April 16th, It's a Horror Show, The Breakup, Story of Bloody Revenge. Hell of a lot of fun. That comes to Kickstarter again, April 16th. And then in June, I don't know exactly when, I think it'll be the end of June. Brandon DePillis approached me a couple weeks ago with this idea. He has this story, and he doesn't really want to put it under Autolease or Cannonball, and he wants to do it as something else. And he came up with this idea of like, well, what if we did it as kind of under the umbrella of It's a Horror Show? So I love that idea. So our first It's a Horror Show Presents is going to come out at the end of June, and it will be Brandon DePillis's standalone story about ice fishing gone wrong. And Brandon is from Minnesota, and I'm like, the fact that he's doing an ice fishing story is just so perfect
Oh, bro.
for
Talk about
for
on the nose,
Minnesota.
man.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
it's great. He shared a couple of pages with me, and I'm so excited to see how it all finishes up, and for it to be a part of the kind of It's a Horror Show universe, I think is going to be really cool. So that's a new thing we're doing. It's a Horror Show Presents, and then kind of inviting other creators if they have like a standalone 22-page whatever story that we could do something like that. It'll have like a little introduction, and my kind of intention right now is to do it kind of like like Vincent Price
Oh,
or like Alfred Hitchcock, when they would have
yeah.
those presents on TV, and it would be like a totally different story, but they would come out ahead of the story and tell you a little bit, you know. So that's the kind of idea that we're going to do. So that one comes out again end of June, and then during that whole time, we're opening submissions up for an It's a Horror Show, the anthology. So we're inviting creators to submit their short stories from 1 to I think 6 pages of campy, cheesy horror, and to submit those. And you have all summer to submit, and it closes July 31st. And then we'll launch that Kickstarter for the It's a Horror Show, the anthology, which I'm really looking forward to it, and that's going to be in October. So right in time for Halloween and spooky season, we'll have that one out, which is going to be awesome. The fun way that we're going to do the anthology too is I'm going to do interlude pages, like pages in between the different stories. one of my favorite like campy horror movies is VHS or even
Oh
Creepshow.
God, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the idea is that I want to make it a found footage comic book.
Well,
So the idea is that like I'm gonna have my band, my werewolf led band, is going to be going to an abandoned comic book shop, the abandoned lesser known comic book shop,
oh wow,
and
that's
in there
awesome.
they're gonna find a short box full of comics, and every time they pull one out, that'll be the next creator's story, and so it'll like be a little way to tie in everybody's story together, um, which I think is just gonna be super fun. Uh-oh. Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
man.
okay.
Hey, my power went out.
Oh my god.
Anyway, yeah. So that cut my internet for a minute. But anyway, it- that sounds incredible, dude.
Yeah,
Incredible.
thank you. So yeah, the anthology, so people can submit all throughout the summer up until July 31st. We'll open submissions at the same time I'm launching my Kickstarter on April 16th. Is when we're also opening submissions. So tons of like cross promotion and stuff like that. And then if that wasn't enough, it's a horror show for the year. The last thing we're going to do is I'm making a Christmas story, and I'm making a Christmas kaiju story, and it's we're going to kind of do it as like a lesser known comic special, kind of like stocking stuffer Christmas story, that'll come out just in time for the holidays, and we'll ship it, in time for you to gift that horror fan this book. And so that's the next project that is about to hit the drawing table, is this Christmas kaiju book, which is I've written most of it. Still needs to get a little bit more fleshed out, but it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. There's a grungy Santa. There's a girl punk band called The End Is Nylon. It's going to be a lot
Wow,
of fun. Yeah.
man, you're gonna have a busy year. What I mean, God bless, man. It's incredible, though, and it brings a question in my mind. How did it make you feel when Brandon hit you up and wanted to do a story in your universe?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I don't know. I didn't know that anybody would want to.
Right,
If
right.
that makes sense. So I had
That's
never really
perfect.
entertained the idea
Yeah.
of doing it like that. I was just like, I don't think anybody's going to want to. So I guess it's just me, doing this. And when Brandon asked about doing that, I was, you know, one, I was just super excited because I
Oh
love
God.
Brandon's stuff. Um, but then yeah, it took like a day for me to kind of like figure out how to like in my mind how to spin it, how to make it work with everything else I had going on, so that it wasn't like I guess like competing for the other stories or something like that. But it felt like I was giving Brandon his platform, that it was gonna like support his idea and then also work with It's a Horror Show. But then like when Brandon and I finally like we were able to have like a good phone call and talk it out and stuff like that. And we came up with the idea of like, okay, we'll do it as It's a Horror Show presents, and it will be like a special kind of thing. I was like, oh, that makes total sense. I love it. Let's go for it. So yeah, I mean, it was I mean, surprising to say the least, because I didn't expect anybody would want to do anything with this world, and then just exciting because I love Brandon's work, and I think it's going to be just an awesome story to have be involved with It's a Horror Show, and I love the idea that other people are coming up with that idea, and I hope that we're able to do more. Like I hope
Right,
that
right.
for 2025 we get to do a couple. It's a Horror Show presents. I think that'd be like sick, if we started doing more and I was able to do more of that stuff. So um, it just opened up this whole other avenue for it that I hadn't even thought about, of making It's a Horror Show instead of just like a series. It's now kind of it's like its own kind of brand almost in a way. and
Right,
and
right.
I'm like, well, I never pictured that. That was never the intention. But I think it's fun just to kind of see how that stuff evolves. And it's like, well, hell yeah, let's evolve it, let's move it forward, let's turn it into
Exactly.
something different. Yeah,
It's what amazes me, even when I'm working on a book, how things just kind of organically happen that you would have never in a million years imagined, that would have took place until you actually started and dove into it, and it's a horror show. I mean, the sky's the limit with that thing. I mean, it's an awesome thing that you created, you know. I mean, it's wide open. It's kind of like, oh God, you got so many anthology shows now, and I mean, it's just
yeah,
it's a great form of storytelling because I mean, you really can do anything you want to with it.
yeah, yeah. I think all of it, all the stuff that we're gonna do, I mean, I'm just over the moon excited about it. I think it was actually Mark's idea to do like to do the actual anthology, and he kind of like put the bug in my ear like a year ago, and was just saying like, well, what if we did this? And I was just like, man, I don't know, like I don't know that anybody's gonna want to. And
Yeah.
then I kind of floated the idea at one of like past the rest of the lesson in comics crew, and they're just like, oh, I've got ideas. And there are stories that are already done. They're like already made, and we haven't even opened submissions because people were that excited about it. And so I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I was being a little apprehensive about it, but I think this is a good idea.
Oh,
And
definitely.
yeah, and I totally think that people love that idea of just maybe they're not going to want to do a full length horror comic, but like to do a short little story and to play around in that sandbox. They're totally game, and I think that that's going to be really cool to see what a lot of people who don't normally write horror come up with. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I was hearing some in the group chat like who might be teaming up to do something like that, and I've heard like Doug Knight was thinking about something with a couple other folks, and yeah, I think it's going to be awesome to see what people come up with. Dan Price floated an idea out to me, and I don't know if I can share it and stuff like that, but his main thing was just like Ed Wood inspired, and I'm
Oh
just
my
like,
God.
yes, Dan, make this happen.
Right.
But yeah,
That's freaking awesome, man. That really is. I mean, bringing on, and just like you brought up the Vincent Price thing and the Alfred Hitchcock, it's so awesome to play in that sandbox, because these types of things have such a special place in people's hearts, you know.
yeah,
And just like you mentioned VHS, I haven't thought about that movie in probably 20 plus years, but I loved it when I was
funny.
coming up, and for you to bring it up just out of the blue like that, I was like, oh, well, hell yeah, holy shit.
Yeah,
It's freaking
yeah. I
awesome.
mean, I love the. I'm a big just horror movie fan, obviously. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
but to be able to, like our anthology call, like the call that we're putting out. Instead of me writing a whole bunch of stuff about like, oh, it's going to be about this and that, we're just doing a big movie list, and it was just like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like this. This is what we're going for, and then the whole idea is just like, yeah, man. So many people love these movies and are into those old niche kind of things. Yeah, like the Vincent Price and Albert Hitchcock Story Hour. But there are so many more. There's like
Oh
Tales from the
God.
Crypt Keeper. There's all
Exactly.
that kind of stuff. More kid friendly. There was like Are You Afraid of the Dark? Goosebumps, all that kind of stuff.
You remember
That
Creep
was in the
Show?
same
You
vein.
remember that one?
Oh yeah,
Creep Show?
oh
Oh
yeah,
God, that's a freaking classic, man.
yeah.
Was it how
Stephen
there was
King
two
and
of
George A. Romero. Yeah,
was
there were
there
two.
two? Yeah, yeah.
And now there's a show. There's a whole
Yeah.
show of Creep Show, which is yeah. Um,
Incredible.
so I know there's an audience for it. People are into that kind of horror, and yeah, I think mainstream horror anymore. Like you go to a movie theater and stuff like that, and like I think the most recent one I saw, or that was in theaters, was that movie Immaculate, and there. How do I put it? the modern horror movies, like some of them are so jarring and intense and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, it's not like I don't like that stuff. I do like, your intense horror movies, and I'm like, all right, really shock me. But I love fun horror where it's just fun, and there's not really a
Yeah.
point to it. It's just fun and stupid. And I love those old B movies, and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, anytime that I see indie horror artists and they're making that kind of stuff, I'm like, yep, I'm all in. More so on
Right.
that kind of stuff than anything that's like very serious and dramatic. I'm like, just give me a werewolf doing something fun, like just killing a bunch
Yeah.
of people for no reason. Just give me that. and I'm
Right.
set, you know what I mean? And so I hope this hits that same audience that I think is out there that just wants fun horror, just yeah.
It's getting to be a lost art, I mean, one, you bring up fun horror, and one that always sticks out in my mind is the old Abbott and Costello Meet the Universal Monsters. I mean,
Yes. Oh yeah.
oh my God. I think me and you have actually talked about that before, but that
Probably.
movie it's fucking perfection, man. It
Yeah.
really is. And
Oh
it's
man,
it's
I
just
love all that stuff.
crazy, just crazy fun. You got the
Mhm.
mummy, and you got Abbott and Costello being Abbott and Costello at their best, and it was
Mhm.
just it's perfect. It's a perfect movie.
Yeah. I love that stuff where where yeah, and those movies weren't B movies. Those were like
No,
those were big budget, comedies when studios
right.
really would like that's what they would do. And I think that like yeah, it's a total lost art. I think that the art of like comedy horror movies we just see less and less and less and less. And I think
Yeah.
there are still good examples of new ones and stuff like that being made, but in terms of good ones, not not as frequently as
Mhm.
we used to get really good ones. And I don't necessarily mean like scary movie, even though scary movie's fun and stuff like
Yeah,
that, but like
that's a whole different genre.
it's
That's
different.
basically a
There's
spoof movie.
yeah,
It's
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 not the
making
same
fun of
thing.
the genre. It's not
Yeah,
an actual comedy horror. The last
right.
one, I tell you, there's a few more that stick out in my mind. Once Bitten, which was Jim Carrey's
Yeah.
first big
Hmm.
movie, and then one of the last ones that I remember seeing was Dracula Dead and Loving It. That I love that movie, man. That there's so
Okay.
many quotable things in that movie. Give him an enema. Give him another enema. I mean, just so so. And he's like, no, not another enema. Oh wow, there
Well,
we go.
there's your power.
Yeah, doing something in the neighborhood, man. I tell you,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I think of Shaun of the Dead as being another like one
I
in
forgot
that.
that one. Yeah, that's
Uh,
awesome.
um, yeah, Return it like there's a couple good zombie ones that are definitely in that vein. Return of the Living Dead is one that just like, even though maybe it wasn't supposed to be totally funny, it is. Every time the
Yeah,
zombies attack, it plays the song "Do You Want to Party?" and it's like,
yeah,
yeah, hell yeah, I want to party. and bring on the zombies and yeah, and so I mean I think there are some like really good ones. Even recently there was this movie and it came out like I want to say 2 years ago, maybe it's just a year ago. It was called Psycho Gorman, and it was the
I don't
one of the
think I've
weirdest
even seen
movies.
the previews to that.
It was weird. It is a pretty small release. Shutter, if you're into horror, Shutter is really worth it.
Okay.
Because they do like originals and all kinds of stuff. And I think Psycho Gorman may have been like a Shutter original, but it was really funny. This little girl ends up being in control of this like murderous alien from another dimension, and she can like control him and make him do anything. And like at one point, they just like there's a musical interlude, and they just like he's like playing the drums. Oh my god, it's so freaking funny. It's great. It's a really well done movie. And there's like little pops of that, but they're so not advertised, and unless you're really in the know and looking for it, you're never going to find it. That's kind of a bummer, you know.
Yeah,
You're not getting the
it
major
really is.
theatrical releases, and then you go see a horror movie in theaters, like, man, horror's a dead genre, and you're like, it's not.
Oh
You're not
God,
looking on the
no.
right spot. Yeah.
I mean, I think horror in general, just basic horror, has really had a resurgence in the last couple of years. You know, I
Mhm.
mean, they've done some really smart horror movies. You know, here in just say the last 4 or 5 years, you had Nope. People could call that
Yeah. Oh yeah.
sci-fi, but I mean, it's still horror. I mean,
Oh, totally.
anytime it's meant to be scary as horror. Uh, what's
Yeah.
it?
I mean, Jordan
Keenan and
Peele.
Jordan Peele. I get
Yeah.
him mixed up with
Anything he
Keenan, but
does, I'm
oh,
just
it's
like
incredible.
all about it. I think that, like, now that he's producing stuff too under what is it called? I think it's Monkey Paw Productions.
Yeah,
And
that's it.
so anything he does now, I'm just like, yep, I'm there. You've got my money, Jordan Peele. Like, just take it. You know, when they did the new version of Candyman, I don't know if you saw it. It was
Bits and pieces.
so freaking good.
Yeah.
I would, you know, I love the original Candyman. I love the score to it. I love all of that. Um, and I was really worried when I saw that they're going to make, do kind of like a remake.
Right, right.
It's, oh man, it expands on the first one. It doesn't like negate it. It builds the mythos in a really great way, and I was blown away by it. And again, Monkey Paw Productions, and it like, yeah. So I mean, there's good examples of, like, there's a couple mainstream guys that are doing like
Yeah.
really good stuff for sure.
Blumhouse, I mean, they've really kind of, they've really
They're the
kind of
name now.
taken,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's huge brand now. And I mean, what's cool, what was one of the first big ones they done? Was it The Invisible Man? Was that one of the first really big hits? I know they've had several, but I want to say that's one of the main ones that kind of put Blumhouse on the map, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that sounds right. I feel like that was more recent though, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean they've
Um,
had several, but I want to say that's one of the main ones that kind of put them in the limelight. You know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, but now, they have so many movies. Like, they're just
Oh God, yeah.
um, yeah. I just like looked up the Blumhouse website, and it's just tons. I mean, Sinister and
That was a good one.
Oculus
Yeah.
and Paranormal Activity is all Blumhouse, and um, tons of stuff. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. The Purge, all that stuff.
Oh wow, I didn't even know The Purge was Blumhouse.
Yeah.
I remember that when that movie first hit the scene, and it was a whole new genre. Basically,
Mhm.
I mean, it really was.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it's
kind
become,
of it's not really horror. It's not really a thriller.
yeah.
It's not really. It doesn't. It kind of fits in all categories,
Mhm.
in some
Yeah,
way.
and now, like, the Purge is such a part of, like, just like the cultural lexicon. People,
Yeah,
when people say it's like the Purge, everybody knows what you're talking about. You know what I
exactly.
mean? And it's such a cultural point now of
Right.
just our understanding of, of the world. You know,
Yeah.
you see all the time people are saying, like, oh, it's just like that looks like the Purge, or whatever, and they're referring to nothing to do with a movie, and you're like, yeah, man, horror, people point that stuff out. I think it's funny, so again, I'm a teacher, and students ask me questions about, like, what I make and stuff, and I talk about horror, and a lot of students are like, oh, it's not for me. Why, like, how do you just watch that much horror, or into that much stuff? Isn't that, like, they think that there's something wrong or whatever, like, wrong with you, or like very dark and twisted. I'm like, no, honestly, I'm a very anxious person, and maybe I don't come off that, I don't know, but I'm a very anxious person, and horror is this genre where I can take all my anxieties, my worries, my fears, whatever, and I can just place it in the movie, and I can remove myself from my own anxieties for an hour 45, whatever, right? And I
Right.
get to just, feel that fear, or whatever that those characters are feeling, instead of the million things on my to-do list, or
Exactly.
whatever the anxiety I'm feeling at that point in time. And I was just like, man, honestly, horror is so much more of a release for me of just anxiety. I think other people maybe seek comedy for that, and I'm like, it doesn't quite have that catharsis I need. And
Right.
comedy doesn't. It's just like I need horror, and that will just calm me down. And so I'm like, no, I'm not a very twisted person, or
You just need that
I would say
escape
even
from
my
the
horror.
real. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't say the horror that I write and I make is probably pretty tame. I think the breakup is probably the most gruesome I've ever made. but outside of that, I would say that I'm pretty even keel. And yeah, horror is just like a release, escapist, kind of fantasy, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about what we do, you know, we get to create a book that can give somebody else that same thing, that can
Totally.
help
Yeah.
them completely get immersed in our world, something that we created, and it can take them somewhere else for a little while.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I mean the more I do it, the more rewarding I find it. I can talk comics for hours and hours and hours because I mean I grew up with them. At the
Totally.
core of everything I've done in my life, there was always comics. I
Hmm.
always used that as a release somehow. It kind of, if
Hmm.
nothing else, I wanted to jump in there and I wanted to see what Spider-Man was going through for the day, or join the
Yeah.
X-Men on an adventure, or jump in with Hellboy later on, and
Yeah.
jump into that world. I mean, there's just so much that's possible with comics, and people say comics are dead. That's horseshit, man. I mean,
Oh, totally.
comics will never die. I don't care what
No.
anybody says. There will always be visual storytelling. It might not be exactly in the format that we're used to as far as a book, holding a physical book, but there
Mhm.
there will be sequential arc storytelling from now to the end of man.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think that, like, I always hear worries of how AI is going to make cartooning obsolete and stuff like that, and I'm like, man, it's that's also horseshit.
Yeah,
Because I
definitely.
see,
I don't see it,
how
man. I
AI
don't see it happening.
adapts
Yeah.
adapts to creating comics and stuff like that. And the couple things that I can see is AI has a really hard time replicating the same image multiple times. And I was just like, that's bread and butter sequential stuff. If you can't
Yeah.
do that, you can't tell a story in that kind of format.
Exactly.
Like I've seen there's websites and stuff like that you can plug in and it'll generate like a short little comic and stuff. But like you can see it's like character A, the hair is 5 different styles, through all the
Right.
panels. The clothes are different, all that stuff. How the AI decides to put things in the panel, I'm like, you've got tangents here, 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 here.
Yeah.
It doesn't know to look for those kinds of things. And it's just like,
Right.
yeah, that's the difference between, an actual cartoonist and something soulless like that. It's like that's the big difference. The changes between when you're a cartoonist and you're just plugging in AI is we edit reality to make it into these into panels, and AI just takes and mirrors what other people do and put it into the panels, but there is no translation. It's just putting it in
Right.
there, and it's just like that's the problem. Is that the whole basic way that we tell stories in panels through a page can't be replicated by a machine because it's all intuitive of how it works with multiple panels. It's
Exactly.
I don't see a way in which AI could ever replace that. Like it just doesn't work.
That, and I mean, artists are stepping forward, and there are laws being passed as we sit
Yeah,
here and talk about it.
totally.
Putting blocks against AI. Keith Morange had sent me a thing a while back. Well, actually, here recently, where advertising is even starting to
Mm,
put a go against and try and get laws made to block AI. So, I mean, I don't really think we'll even have to worry about it. I mean,
Yeah.
as soon as it was announced, people were like, "Oh my God, all artists are going away." I mean, no, we're not. We're right.
Yeah.
We're right here creating, and
Yeah.
people are always going to want hand drawn art. I mean, I don't care.
Hmm.
It's I hate to say a niche thing, but I mean, art when a machine creates it, is it really art? I mean,
Yeah.
honestly,
No, I mean,
there's
I
no
think it's a
soul.
really
There's
good.
no.
No, I think I think it's a really good point, and it's yeah. I mean, I totally agree. Excuse me. I don't think it'll ever go away. I think just the need of artists change. I'm trying to remember who it was. Oh, I think it may have been Ethan Hawke. He had like a series of like videos on his social media, and essentially he was just talking about how like um people question the validity of art and like the value of it, and why it's important and stuff like that. And then we have a lockdown,
Right.
and all you're left at home, and all you have is art to kind of like
Yeah.
sustain yourself. Or he mentioned too, it's just like, but what happens when you're like in love and you're like, man, has anybody ever felt this way before and need to express this? And then you seek out poetry, you seek out other stuff like that. Or if you feel really down in the dumps, has anybody ever felt this bad, or know how to get out of this? And you read those escapist things that, and they help you like more than just food, but it's still sustaining, right? And so
Right.
when we ask about like why does it matter, it's just like, okay, pretend that there wasn't any. Like, you would be so in the dark and lonely without those feelings and all that kind of stuff of how to express them. It's like art is sustaining, and I think that
Exactly.
comics, for the fans of it, for people who enjoy reading or whatever, it's just a different art form. It's like movies, it's like books, it's just its own media. And I think that I think comics, the industry, has done a lot of damage to the medium over the
Yeah.
years of like, let's go direct to market. Well, that did not help.
No.
That like, I think that helped comic book stores, but did it really help the medium itself? No. It
No.
like limited access for people like me who lived in rural Montana who did not have a comic book store. I
Right.
wasn't able to get comics anymore, and it's just like that was a problem, right? So the industry does not speak for the medium, and I
No.
think that like we often think that it does, and it's just like, no, like the medium will eventually supersede what the industry is doing, and that's when it will become a more open ground for people to do a lot more. I mean, I think that it's a pretty
Great point.
democratized art form now, and a lot of people can do whatever they want, but how to get it out there because of the direct market and stuff like that is kind of a problem. And I think that eventually we'll move past that, and it won't just be that system anymore. And so I see a bright future for comics.
Oh God. Yeah.
um, it's going to change. Like the system that we have now, the industry is going to radically change, but I think in a really positive way. No,
I mean,
do we?
just like we self. I got you. Yeah, we self create independent creators. We've talked about this. It's the tools are perfect. I mean, it's a perfect storm. And I almost see, as I see more of the bigger names jumping to Kickstarter and Indiegogo and kind of using that first and then going to comic book shops. I'm wondering if we just kind of jumped out into the final frontier of comics. We
Yeah,
kind of beat them there. And they kind
I
of
think that's a
followed
great point.
us. I'm wondering if that's the future of comics. You know.
Yeah, it might be. I think that there's something really great about crowdfunding. I think there's problems because it's a
Oh,
lot of
there's
work.
definitely a problem.
It's a lot of work for a creator to like, okay, now you have to be the platform
The
to get
thick
this out
of it,
and all that
yeah,
kind of
you
stuff.
gotta, yeah,
But at the same time, I'm like, where creators are maybe having a hard time pushing their books past their current publisher or whatever, and like, hey, I want to make this book, And the publisher's like, not really. They're like, well, okay, I'm going to take it to Kickstarter or wherever, right?
Right.
And I'm going to promote it there and get the funding to do it anyways, because I know fans are going to like it, and most of the time fans do really like that stuff, and I think that is pretty exciting to see that. And I think you're right. Like, I think that maybe we're onto something of just kind of like skirting around the need of those kind of bigger publishers to say what can or cannot happen in comics. And this is like, nope, it's the creators, we're deciding. I think that what it might mean too is that, like, either we're going to get more people looking at indie creators as a result, because they're following the creators,
Definitely.
and I think we're going to have more people that, or I could see also just like it's going to get harder for us smaller guys to stand out when we have all these big name people coming in. And so I could see like
there's going to be
potential
pros and
hazards.
cons. Yeah.
But I think you're right, man. I think that there is something to be said about the idea of, going against that convention and what that means for the future of the industry, for sure.
Right. But like we talked about, just a few minutes ago, the industry is by no means going away.
Right. Yeah.
It's
No.
just evolving. It's and the pandemic changed. I hate to even bring that up, but it changed so much.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
it
did.
really did, and it brought about an indie comic renaissance, basically. I mean, all these creators that had been sitting on these stories for years and years and years finally sat down and said, "Hey, I'm going to make a book, and I'm going to put it out there." And the ones that, I mean, some folks only have one story to tell. They got that one story out, they were satisfied. But us as creators, we just keep going with it. We've got large stories or multiple stories, but comics is and by no means going anywhere.
Totally.
Said all that to say that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree, and I think that it's fun to see, the aftermath of the pandemic and what kind of happened afterwards of I don't know, they're like people being braver with their creativity and just putting it out there and stuff like that, instead of just kind of holding it back and stuff like that. I think that's a net gain. That's a real positive. And I think that's really cool to see people doing that. I mean, hell, that's lesser known comics right there, right? Mark.
Right.
It was during the pandemic, and he was just like, "Man, I got all this time on my hands. I'm gonna make a comic and see what happens." And then boom, lesser known comics, and the community exploded and all that kind of stuff. And he found all these like-minded people who were like, "I want to make a comic," and he's just like, "Well, let me help you," and there you go. And so I mean, I think that that was it created that renaissance that it's the kind of idea, right? What happened after the Dark Ages, the Renaissance, right? Like we needed that lull, and then whoop,
to bring all that light, and bring us out of the Dark Ages. Yeah, I mean, it's like it was a really dark time, and a lot of bad things happened, but you had so much good that come out of it too. And
I agree. Yeah.
Well, dude, hey, we're just about at that time. Dude, if I can't wait for the time when we get to do a con together. I know we can sit and talk this stuff for hours, man. I'm telling you. But hey, everybody, down in the description, you jump down there, you jump on the link that's going to be posted down there. The Kickstarter hasn't started up yet, but April 16th.
April 16th.
April 16th. Hey, I need you guys to do this. Go ahead and hit it. Go ahead and jump on there, click it, and just go ahead and subscribe to this thing. That way, when the time comes, you get to be in the know, and as soon as it launches, you'll get notified. So be sure and sign up, because you'll be helping Jade, because numbers matters, guys. I'm going to say this till I'm blue in the face. Numbers matter. especially with a Kickstarter. Everything has an algorithm, so the more followers he has, the better chance and the higher up the list of comics, because there's a sea of them, guys, and
Mhm.
we're a needle in a stack of needles. So help his needle be a little shinier than the rest of them, and just hit that notification button and follow the campaign. And when the time comes, be sure and back the project. If you can't back the project, be sure and share the project. I mean, that's priceless in
Totally.
itself, because we don't have the big two or the big three behind us pushing us. We've got you guys. So help Jade make this thing happen. And Jade, thank you so much for your time, buddy. It was so
Yeah.
great to
Thanks,
have you
Gary.
back on, and I can't wait to do this again. Um, Best of luck with all these projects this year. I know you're absolutely going to kill it. I'll be back in each and every one of them because I love what you do, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, really appreciate being able to talk about it and go down the rabbit holes of of
Yeah.
comics and horror and all that fun stuff. So, yeah, thanks so much, Jerry. And yeah, it's a horror show. The Breakup coming to Kickstarter April 16th.
Jump on it, guys. That's a show. We love you guys. Hey, real quick, it's free. Hit that like, drop a comment. You guys take it easy. Have a blessed one. And that's the show.